The Split Opinion Approach to Client Feedback with Gina Coe and Sandra Collins.
So today, in terms of Macey's story, it sounds like she's asking for some advice. And knowing that, in counseling, we don't really give advice. It's interesting because in my experience, when clients ask for advice, and when I bring it back, like this is at each side, if I'm the counselor, I bring it back to the team, we will use something like a split opinion. So I can explain that here. So a split opinion is to have kind of two sides of reflecting back to the client in kind of not polarized, but kind of two ends of an opinion. So for example, I will bring back to the team, part of the team is wondering if you would consider doing something like this. The other part of the team is wondering if you would consider doing something like that. And these two sides are different, right? And really the idea is to have the client not to say, I'm going to choose one side or the other right now, but to reflect on what is it like to lean on one over the other during the week before they come back to see us, right? So that's what the split opinion is. So in terms of what Macey's asking for, it sounds like she's wondering about the coming out process as an Asian woman in the Asian community. How does she do that? She sounds like she's struggling a little bit with that. So what are your thoughts about one side or the other to bring back to Macey?
Well, I'm going to I'm going to lean in the direction of taking some risk in the coming out process. And I'm also going to position that within my own experience, which of course is very different from Macey's. So for me coming out, that process of coming out followed a long process of extricating myself from some of the values and beliefs of my family and embracing feminism. And so my coming out was a lot easier for me because I'd already dealt with a lot of the kinds of challenges that Macey is facing around other kinds of values and beliefs related to gender. So Macey is in a different place. So I'm not going to suggest, leaping out of the closet like I did and just, suggesting people get out of my way. But recognizing that her cultural context is very different and her position in the process is very different. And where she ends up in the long run might be very different from me. But I have that kind of background of my own experience to kind of bounce off of. So I would like to present the position to Macey that maybe she start with a place that feels a little bit higher risk, but not hugely risky. And as I've paid attention to Macey's story, I have this picture in my mind of the image of Macey's mom when Ryan was moving out, standing in the driveway with the cupcake. And the feeling that I got from that image that Macey described was the caretaking piece of mom and the relational piece of mom. So I'm actually wondering if maybe mom is a place to begin to consider at least beginning to share some of who she is, since she's built that support from Ryan now. So that's kind of where I'm starting from.
Pause here to write down some ideas about an alternative for Macey, offering another path for her to consider.
The other thing, I was just going to say, the other thing I wonder about is Macey thinking about what it is that she's needing from the coming out process. So from being able to be more public around her relationship with Ling, what's the underlying need there? Is it freedom? Is it validation? Is it a sense of social support? Because I think that would also affect who she chose. And if what she was feeling was the need for validation, it seems like mom is a pretty core person in there in terms of how she views herself and the sort of history around gender and the history around sexuality. that's something to consider in terms of the option of putting mom on the table as one of the people that might be significant.
Pause again to add new ideas to your proposed pathway forward. Perhaps attending to the other types of needs that Macey might factor into her decision making.
I have one last little thing to say, and that's about risk, because the flip side of need is risk. The argument that I'm making in this process is more risky. And so then I think another question, going back to Macey, is risk tolerance. How fragile is this sense of being okay in the moment? And for me, that would be a question that would affect the choice that she makes. So that's just another kind of prompt that came into my mind.
What else might you add to your proposed pathway to give Macey another possibility for how she might approach her challenge?
Yeah, this is great, Sandra. So going back to the split opinion idea is now I'm the counselor. I will go back to the counseling room and I will present with Macey to Macey. So kind of, I'm just going to summarize what we kind of did here. So a part of it is maybe perhaps having Macey reflect on what, as you said, Sandra, what's her needs in terms of the coming out process, and weighing some of the risks with that. So I can start with that. And then I can say that, part of my team, so I'm going to present Sandra's feedback, is thinking maybe mom it sounds like it's more risky, but perhaps maybe you might be ready to talk to mom.
Gina would now present your opinion to Macey. Take a moment to synthesize your thoughts for Macey's consideration.
So then I'm going to present this to Macey, and I'm not going to say, oh, now you have to choose. It's really about reflecting on these two sides, and then processing it and maybe journaling about it, and then coming back next time to talk about it, right? That's what the split opinion is about. So again, it's not saying you have to choose something right now, right? So it's and in terms of my experience with the split opinion, when clients come back, it's really neat because they'll say, you know what, that idea is so neat. And then sometimes they come back with a decision, or they have even followed through with doing something, or they come back and they might still be confused, which is fine, right? We'll pick it up from there. So, yeah.
It's a really interesting tool because it gives us a way of also addressing that issue of counselor directiveness or non-directiveness in a way that I feel is responding to what Macey is asking for and still honoring the collaborative process that is empowering her to make her own decisions. So I think, or at least to reflect through those various options.